Next up, we're going to flick over to Karen to talk about knowing which levers to pull when looking at your stats.
Well, I think what I see so much is people is saying it's not working. What should I do? Well, so you got to start with what's not working. So, okay, ROAS isn't there, but why isn't ROAS there? So working backward and really finding where the actual bottleneck is and not looking at any one of those things in a vacuum and not looking at any one of those things and saying like, oh, the CTR is super low. I got to fix that. When meanwhile, the whole thing is performing really, really well. So I think this is really important. I wanted to go over a little bit of some of the key indicators of things and what you might actually do about those. That's the other kind of thing I keep seeing is, should I just start over? I usually find sometimes it is the answer, just start over, but I usually find it a lot harder to start over. And then you're going to face new bottlenecks in your new campaign that you're going to have to break through anyway. So versus just starting over and losing the optimization that you maybe once had, figure out what's fallen off or where the bottleneck is. And if you have something that was previously performing, that's actually one of the best scenarios to start with when you're troubleshooting, because you had something that was once performing. So it really is a matter of it. For those of you who don't know, that there's the compare tool. When you pull the date down in Ads Manager and you can toggle on the compare tool, you just toggle on the compare tool and literally look key indicator to key indicator. What is the piece that changed the most? What fell off the most? Once you know that answer, you can start figuring out, okay, what does that piece tell me about the whole story? So, did conversion rates change and CPM change drastically? So those two things together start to tell a little bit of a story. CPM sometimes it is just, as we come up in the US here on, what is this holiday coming up? Labor Day. We're probably going to see some higher CPM, some sales, some additional ad spend out in the market. But it can also be indicative of falling into a different pocket of audience. And some people say, well, I didn't change the targeting. Yeah, but if you have, 5 million people in an audience, there are so many different pockets within that same audience that you could be in. So if Facebook has kind of shifted into a different pocket of audience and you're seeing a much, much different CPM, so the competition in that audience is either more or it's less, and you're seeing a massive change in conversion rate, then suddenly what you're looking at here is probably a different pocket audience because it's different behavior. And so you kind of know like, okay, well, do I give it time to just kind of come back to where it is? Do I then start over and try to find myself in a different pocket of audience? But at least you're making a little bit more of an educated decision about why you're doing what you're doing. Because if you don't, then that's when things get overwhelming and a little confusing for you because you feel like you're just throwing spaghetti against the wall to see if it sticks. And that's when you have a really hard time communicating with your client because you don't really know what to say to them outside of, well, I'll try this, or, well, we just started over, or this happened for some reason. But if you can logically say, this is the metric I'm seeing that's different, and this is what that usually indicates, and this is what we as a team are doing about it, that gives you a lot more of a controlled and trusting conversation to have with your client. Click-through rate is another one. So what does poor click-through rate mean? It's also one of the, by the way, the easier metrics to budge. If you're trying to budge CPM and you're trying to budge click-through rate, I would attack click-through rate first. There's more you can do about it. There's not a lot you can do sometimes about competition that's just the market or other ad spend that's in the market. But click-through rate, have a look at your copy, have a look at your creative. You might be testing 6 different creatives, but do they all kind of look alike when you really back up? And one of the ways I like to look at this is don't click into the ad and look at the ad, because when you click into the ad and look at the ad, you're gonna be like, well, this one's purple, this one's yellow. They look nothing alike. But when you're looking zoomed out, you're looking just in the ad set level and you just see all the thumbnails. If the thumbnails are all kind of evoking the same general vibe or feeling, and you notice like, oh, these are all stock images of a person sitting at different computers. But yeah, with click-through rate, you want to look at the copy, you look at the creative, your copy. Does it resonate with your client or does it resonate with your audience? Because sometimes when the client is driving your direction, your strategy, and they want to be represented a certain way, your copy really only ends up appealing to your client and not their target audience. So just to kind of go over quickly the three major, maybe four major bottlenecks that I'm looking for first is click-through rate and CPM, because those two things drive your cost per click. So a lot of you guys say like, my cost per click is just, I can't sustain this cost per click. You can't necessarily just attack directly cost per click because it's made up of these other two metrics. So you got to figure out which one of those two metrics do you have the best chance at influencing in some way. But so click-through rate, CPM, CPC, and then paying attention to your conversion rate. Because a lot of times we get really caught up in trying to change our click-through rates or saying our CPMs are too high, but your conversion, if nobody's converting when they get to your page, then none of that stuff really matters. And so if you can look in those four different areas, and obviously there are other things that you need to keep an eye on. Bounce rate, like if everybody's bouncing, then you've got a little bit of a leaky bucket there too. But if you can focus on those four and promise yourself, I'm not going to look at this in a vacuum. I think that will help you guys troubleshoot a lot of your own campaigns. In between calls, obviously, we love getting on and troubleshooting with you and coming with ideas and brainstorming. But sometimes in between, you're kind of seeing things start to change and you're not really sure what's happening. And even if you are sure what's happening, you're not really sure what to do about it. So just remember, CPM, indicative of quality, indicative of how competitive your audience is, sometimes indicative by that same token of time of year. It can be pretty volatile, go up and down. CTR, check out your copy, your creative, and make sure there's a match with your audience, because great copy, great creative doesn't matter if you're in front of the wrong people. If you think you're targeting one person, but you're actually hanging out over here in front of a different person. And then your landing page, your actual conversion rate. Definitely make sure you're paying attention to that even before you take clients on, really, because a lot of times you can work some magic on the ad side. But again, if their landing page, their funnel, their store doesn't tend to convert on its own, that's a problem that's just going to get magnified with paid traffic.